Good evening. You can call me H. Welcome back to my channel. For today's story, we are having a 2023 Pinot Gris by Thornbury from the Waipara region of New Zealand. It's a reasonably well-priced bottle, but it's definitely a unique tasting Pinot Gris. It has a perfect combination of acidity and flavors. So, tonight I am reading you another Grimm's fairy tale. So, pour yourself a glass of wine or a hot cup of tea, sit back, get cozy, and let's get into it. Once upon a time, there lived a sweet little girl who was beloved by everyone who saw her. But her grandmother was so excessively fond of her that she never knew when to give the child enough. One day, the grandmother presented the little girl with a red velvet riding hood. And as it fitted her really well, she would never wear anything else. And so, she was called Little Red Riding Hood. One day her mother said to her, "Come, Red Riding Hood, here is a piece of nice meat and a bottle of wine. Take these to your grandmother. She is ill and weak, and she will relish them. Make haste before she gets up. Go quietly and carefully, and do not run, lest you should fall and break the bottle, and then your grandmother will get nothing. When you go into her room, do not forget to say good morning, and do not look about in all the corners. I will do everything as you wish," replied Red Riding Hood, taking her mother's hand. The grandmother dwelt far away in the wood, half an hour's walk from the village, and as Little Red Riding Hood entered among the trees, she met a wolf. But she did not know what a malicious beast it was, and so she was not at all afraid. "Good day, Little Red Riding Hood," he said. "Many thanks, wolf," said she. "Whither away so early, Little Red Riding Hood?" "To my grandmother's," she replied. "What are you carrying under your apron?" "Meat and wine," she answered. "Yesterday we baked the meat, that grandmother, who was ill and weak, might have something nice and strengthening." "Where does your grandmother live?" asked the wolf. "A good quarter of an hour's walk further into the forest. The cottage stands under 3 great oak trees. Near it are some nut bushes, by which you will easily know it." But the wolf thought to himself, "She's a nice tender thing, and will taste better than the old woman. I must act craftily, that I may snap them both up." Presently he came up again to Little Red Riding Hood and said, "Just look at the beautiful flowers which grow around you. Why do you not look about you? I believe you don't hear how beautifully the birds sing. You walk on as if you were going to school. See how merry everything is around in the forest." So Little Red Riding Hood opened her eyes, and when she saw how the sunbeams glanced and danced through the trees, and what splendid flowers were blooming in her path, she thought, "If I take my grandmother a fresh nosegay, she will be very pleased, and it is so very early that I can even then get there in good time." And running into the forest, she looked about for flowers. But when she had once begun, she did not know how to leave off, and kept going deeper and deeper among the trees, in search of some more beautiful flowers. The wolf, however, ran straight to the house of the old grandmother and knocked at the door. "Who's there?" asked the old lady. "Only Little Red Riding Hood, bringing you some meat and wine. "Please open the door," replied the wolf. "Lift up the latch," cried the grandmother. "I am too weak to get up." So the wolf lifted the latch, and the door flew open, and jumping without a word on the bed, he gobbled up the poor old lady. Then he put on her clothes, and tied her cap over his head, got into the bed, and drew the blankets over him. All this time Red Riding Hood was still gathering flowers, and when she had plucked as many as she could carry, she remembered her grandmother, and made haste to the cottage. She wondered very much to see the door wide open, and when she got into the room, she began to feel very ill, and exclaimed, "How sad I feel! I wish I had not come today." Then she said, "Good morning," but received no answer. So she went up to the bed and drew back the curtains, and there lay her grandmother, as she thought, with the cap drawn half over her eyes, looking very fiercely. "Oh, grandmother, what great ears you have!" "The better to hear with," was the reply. "And what great eyes you have!" "The better to see with." "And what great hands you have!" "The better to touch you with." "But, grandmother, what great teeth you have!" "The better to eat you with." And scarcely were the words out of his mouth, when the wolf made a spring out of bed, and swallowed up poor little Red Riding Hood. As soon as the wolf had thus satisfied his appetite, he laid himself down again in the bed, and began to snore very loudly. A huntsman passing by overheard him, and thought, "How loudly the old woman snores! I must see if she wants anything." So he stepped into the cottage, and when he came to the bed, he saw the wolf lying in it. "What! Do I find you here, you old sinner? I have long sought you," he exclaimed, taking aim with his gun. Then, just as he was about to fire, it occurred to him that the wolf might have devoured the grandmother, and that he might still be able to save her. So, instead of firing, he took a pair of scissors and began to cut open the belly of the sleeping wolf. After 2 snips, he saw the little Red Riding Hood, and after 2 more snips, the little girl sprang out, crying, "Oh, how frightened I have been! It was so dark inside the wolf." And then the old grandmother came out, also alive, but scarcely able to breathe. Little Red Riding Hood ran outside and found some big stones, and they put them in the wolf's belly. When he woke up, he tried to run away, but the stones were so heavy that he collapsed and fell dead. Then all 3 were happy. The huntsman skinned the wolf and took the skin. The grandmother ate the cake and drank the wine Little Red Riding Hood had brought, and felt better at once. As for Little Red Riding Hood, she said to herself, "I will never again leave the path and run into the woods when my mother has told me not to." The end. So there you have it, Little Red Riding Hood by Grimm's Fairy Tales. I hope you enjoyed that story. For more stories, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. I appreciate you and your support. That's all for tonight. Good night for now. What up, poor little Redding? Can we cut that and do that again?